I have to take a shit every time I become nervous or anxious, and that is like one of the biggest problems I face because I was just sitting on a bench in my society. Alright, just regularly sitting, doing nothing. And then just one random uncle just walks by me. Now, this interaction seems very, very simple and like nothing is wrong in this, but that uncle actually gives me a stare and then he walks away. Now, in most cases, you wouldn't care. But for some reason, my mind just wouldn't stop. And it made me so anxious to the point that my heart was beating so fast. My legs were shaking. I couldn't sit still and I had to take a shit. Right. And so anxiety has been this big, big problem for me that I've been facing for very long. I had social anxiety back then, and this very incident really, really highlighted the problem that I was facing. And so, in this video, I want to break down how to actually stop your brain from bullying you because I found a method that nobody was talking about on YouTube. They were all talking about meditation. Instead, I found like a literal step by step method you can do to stop your brain from bullying you. And this is for someone who becomes extremely nervous, who gets a lot of anxiety, who just ends up in a very terrible situation because of just their brain. Because what happens is that when you get a lot of anxiety, it's like the worst feeling ever, right? Your day just gets ruined all the time, right? And I remember this very, very specifically. After that day, I had gone to sleep and I couldn't even sleep because my mind was just going off so much and it was just not stopping. Back in 2021 or 2020, I don't remember, or before the lockdown, I had a lot of social anxiety back then, wherein I was just scared to talk to people. That time I didn't have the same anxiety, but now it's been like any sort of situation. If I'm like going to hop on a sales call, I get anxious. If I'm going to talk to someone on a call, I get anxious. And I've found this method which might just genuinely like change your life because it has. And this is a no edit video, by the way. So if I make mistakes, just excuse me. It's early on in the morning, you know. And yeah, I'm just going to have no edits in this. So if you have anxiety or something, I really, really wanted to watch this through without any edits, because if you can't do that, then there is no way you're going to beat anxiety, right? There is no way you're going to beat it if you can't just sit through and just look at me, right? So one of the key concepts that I want you to know is that anxiety is not the problem. So everything in life is cause and effect, right? Something causes another thing, which causes another thing. So anxiety is actually not the cause, but it's a consequence. It's the effect of something. And when I understood this, it really, really shifted the perspective for me because it made me understand what exactly is anxiety. So anxiety is not your inner child or your self identity trying to hold you back. It is your untapped potential. Now let me explain. We all have a certain amount of energy that can be expended every single day, right? Let's just say you have a goal, and to achieve this goal you have 100 units of energy that you have to expend. And when you have to expend 100 units of energy, it has to be expended, right? If I gave you a scenario in which every single day you get money, right? Your bank account gets filled with the same amount of money every single day, and it resets every single day. So let's just say you have like a $10,000 in your bank account right now. Tomorrow you'll have 10K. The day after you'll have 10K. It doesn't matter if you spend it or not, it will still be at 10K. It won't compound. So if in that scenario, every single day your money is getting resetted, you will try and spend all of that money every day, right? You will try to like make and maximize the money use. It's the same thing. We all have very, very specific amounts of energy or units, you can say, to expend, right? And if you do not expend those units towards the goal that you actually want, you have something known as untapped potential. That is, let's just say one day you decide and just like listen to your brain and you just don't do any productive work and you go to sleep, right? After like let's say 100 units, you spent like 20 units towards your goals that day. That means 80% of your units is just left. It is just there. And the thing about energy is that it cannot be created or destroyed, right? So you can't get rid of it. So this energy has to go somewhere. That is what happens with anxiety and this nervousness and your brain overthinking and all of that stuff. It is this excess energy that it just stores up inside your brain because it has to go somewhere. And why does it get stored up as negativities? Because when you don't dedicate your day towards your goal, you actually feel like crap. Right? You feel like absolute shit. And so when that happens, the energy inside of you gets, it sounds a little bit very, very weird, but just bear with me. The energy gets created into very negative energy inside your brain and just compounds over time because energy can't be destroyed. And so when the time comes wherein one thing gets a hold of you, which I'll cover in a bit, this energy comes out outside in your behavior, in your feelings, in your mind, in your body, and that is what we call anxiety. This is my own personal perception of it because it explains a lot of things. Because think about it, the last time you had anxiety, right? Especially like anxiety towards some sort of event, not people, but like event. Oops. If you had anxiety towards an event, was it at was it the anxiety that you got, was it during a productive day? Chances are it was not, right? During a productive day you will have the least amount of anxiety that you will ever get. Why is that? I was just sitting down and wondering, why is that on the least productive day is when I am getting all of these anxious thoughts? It is because of this. Your anxiety is your untapped potential. Now, your anxiety, how does it actually come out? I literally mentioned just a few minutes ago that this energy comes out and tries to bully you, right? So, how does this actually happen? Your anxiety is played on one of your core fears. So, let me explain. So, as a child, right, you have certain fears which you develop, right? Which might be very insignificant, which might be very useless, but it does exist. And when these fears exist and you're not acknowledging these fears, they play out into your adulthood. Right? So when you grow up, these fears dictate a lot of your behaviors. So I'll give you an example. I used to train taekwondo, right? So I'm a black belt in taekwondo. I used to train for 10 years. And I used to train since I was like a very small child. So I remember like around 5th grade while I was like training, I used to hate fights, right? Sparring and fighting. I used to hate that shit. So I remember every time our sir used to say like, "Oh, it's time to fight." I used to tell the sir that I need to take a shit. I need to go home because in reality I actually did because I got so anxious. So I got anxious. I needed to take a huge dump. So I used to tell the sir, "I'm going home to take a dump." And I used to go home. I used to shit, and just sit in the toilet until the class was over, so I could avoid this fight. And very recently, I was just introspecting like this video and how I have learned how to deal with anxiety, and I came to a conclusion that the anxiety that I used to get was just based on one of my core fears, and I noticed this core fear come up in every one of these anxious attacks I got. That core fear was the fear of confrontation. Now, it sounds very weird. You were expecting probably like heights or like dogs or something, but no, the fear of confrontation. So, what does that mean? So, I don't know why. Maybe I haven't really thought about it much till now, but for some reason, as a child, I was just fearful of confronting people. So, like, if someone argues with you or disrespects you, going there and trying to beat them up, or just those types of situations in which I have to confront anyone, I used to be afraid of that very, very much. And that fear played out. So when I had to fight, I was fearful of that, of the confrontation of fighting that person. So I used to get that anxiety. The story I started this video with, when that uncle stared at me, I was thinking, why did I get anxiety over here? Because I remember when that uncle stared and went away, right? I had anxious thoughts of me. So, what I would do, right? What I would do. So, I was thinking about the things that I would have to do to the uncle. So, maybe like arguing with him, beating him up, some stupid shit, but it was all confrontation. And so, whenever this energy gets stored inside of you, this excess energy, your untapped potential, it is just sitting there. Right? It's a sitting ball of energy that needs to get out. And when it gets the chance, your core fears like will manipulate your own behavior, okay, to the point that you know it will manipulate it to the point that this anxiety will actually come out. And the very interesting part about this is that you're not actually fearful of the situation. You're not anxious about the situation. It's a very basic and very stupid thing that you're afraid of. Because think about it. If you get anxiety to talk to someone, and if you have social anxiety, you're not actually afraid of talking to that person. What you're actually afraid of is the thing that you will have to do to talk to that person. So let me explain. So when I had anxious thoughts about that uncle staring at me, it was not that I was anxious or of the situation that he was staring at me. That was not the anxiety. Like I said, the anxiety was what I would have to do. And so anxiety is very self-centered. You won't get anxiety about what others want to do to you, right? If you have anxiety like, oh my god, someone might try and beat me up, it is not that you're afraid of someone beating you up. It is that you're afraid of what you would have to do. I really want you to make this point very very clear in your head, that whenever you get anxious thoughts, it is not the thing that you're afraid of, the situation you're afraid of. It is the thing you would have to do yourself in that situation, to deal with that situation, which causes the anxiety for you. So this is basically the entire premise of anxiety and how it actually works. So now we've understood that anxiety is your untapped potential. It is something that plays out from your core fears, right? And so what I want you to do right now is to just pause the video for a second and just think to yourself, like, what is one fear that is playing out in my life? What is this one fear that has been dictating everything I do? Because if you cannot find this one fear, I'm telling you, it will be very very hard for you to follow the next steps on how to actually defeat this anxiety. Because without this, it is very very hard. It's like shooting arrows in the dark. It's going to be very hard to hit the target. So I really really recommend just pause this video right now. Just think about what core fear has been dictating your life, and once you find it, we'll start the steps. So I found this method to deal with anxiety, right? So anxiety can be divided into two parts: your thoughts and your actions. So your thoughts and your body basically, and we want to deal with both of these things together. All right. And so the way I have found it is to not meditate and sit down and meditate, but there's a very specific method that I personally use every time I overthink, every time I get anxious thoughts or frustration or nervousness. Because the funny part about this was that before I recorded this video, I had anxious thoughts to not record it because I was, being vulnerable. I was telling a part of me that, I don't want the public to know, which is very crazy because I was, I'm a bit insecure that maybe like, maybe I shouldn't have made this video, but here we are. So I've used the same steps before I even recorded this video. So what you essentially want to do is, once you understand that you're having anxious thoughts, which is the first step to understand, most people do not understand the power, or like the thing that I'm grateful for is that I've meditated for so long that I'm at that point wherein like I'm able to be mindful of when I have those thoughts. So that is the first step. You have to be mindful of when you get these thoughts, because if you're not mindful of when you get them, you can't deal with them. So first thing you need to do is just when you're having this thought, once you identify, like, oh my God, I'm having anxiety, I'm having anxious thoughts, the first step is to calm down your CNS. So, CNS is your central nervous system, right? And the CNS is sort of like the gut. So, if you put a lot of food in your stomach, right, you feel brain fog, you feel tired and sleepy. Why? Because your brain and your body is working so much to digest this food, right? The same way, when your central nervous system is bombarded with stimulus, it takes time to process through this stimulus. And in most cases, whenever you get anxiety, it's usually the day you have overstimulated your brain. So your central nervous system, your CNS, is already on like fire mode because it's got so many things to process, right? And then what you essentially want to do is to calm down your CNS, to let it breathe a little bit, to process this information faster. Because when you're able to calm down your CNS, you're able to actually let that energy get processed out way faster. So anxiety is like a lingering energy. You know, in Minecraft, you have these lingering potion effects. So it's a lingering energy that just stays for a very long time. It's very sticky and stays for a very long time. So first things first, whenever you get anxiety, just tell yourself, I'm getting anxious thoughts, and take three deep, deep breaths. It is very important you take three deep, deep breaths because that is very, very efficient for you to calm down your CNS. Now, once you've taken those three deep breaths, you should have some sort of calmness inside of you to the point that you're aware you're getting anxious thoughts. That's the first step. The second step is very specifically close your eyes. All right. So, close your eyes and tell yourself and imagine in your brain, tell yourself this, that my thought that I'm having is a cloud, right? It sounds very autistic, but just bear with me. Just tell yourself and imagine in your mind that your thought is a cloud. And just tell yourself, like, this cloud is in the sky right now, and it's going away, and it's going away, and it's gone out of my head. I found this technique to be very, very useful to help me get rid of this thought. Because once we're able to deal with this thought, we're able to deal with the body, right? So tell yourself that the thought you're having, the anxious thought you're having, is a cloud, right? And the cloud, just imagine the cloud in the sky just slowly, slowly, slowly passing away. All right. And the second thing is, I learned this from the book Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, right? So I have it right over here. So I learned it from this book, which really, really helped me out. So Marcus Aurelius was a, if you didn't know, he was a Roman emperor, and he was sort of like the founding father of, Stoicism, you can say. And in his book Meditations, which was basically like his diary, he wrote one very specific quote, which really, really like helped me out. And I don't remember this very specific words, but it said that whatever situation you're thinking of, you will have the same resources to deal with it tomorrow than today. What that means is very important. Once you've let the thought go from your brain, you need to tell yourself this: whatever I'm anxious of is not real. It's not there. It's not real. It's in my mind. And there is no point in worrying about this thing because I will have the same resources or even more to deal with it in the future. This is the key point. To deal with this anxiety, you need to know that anxiety is just worrying about something which is not real. And you sort of have to push it off to your future self to deal with. So let's say you're nervous about, like, like someone is coming to beat you up. You had a fight with some dude. Now this guy is going to bring all of his friends and beat you up, and you're anxious and you're nervous. You first of all just tell yourself, like, okay, I'm getting anxious thoughts. You calm down with your breathing. Then you imagine it as a cloud and it just goes away. Then you tell yourself, the thing that I'm worried about is not real. It has not happened yet. It has not happened yet. and I will have the same resources to deal with it later on when it happens, like the resources I have right now. So it is better that I do not think about this and let my future self deal with it. And this is the same process that I have used all the time whenever I get anxious thoughts. And this really helps to just get your mind back on track. Because if you can't get your mind back on track, there is no way in hell you're getting your body back on track. So this just helps the mind calm down and get rid of this thought and think rationally. And this is the first step. The second step is to calm down your body. Now, what I have found is that if you're getting anxious thoughts, just walk. Like it's just one of the best forms to get rid of your like your anxious anxiety, or like your body moving. Your body moving with anxiety. Just walk. The nervousness that you feel will just go away because that energy is just being used somewhere. Right? Just walk. Do something physical. Get out of your chair. Do something. Don't sit down. And once you have gotten through this anxiety, I want you to just sit down for like a couple of minutes and just think, why did I get this? What caused this? Because ultimately we want to improve, right? We want to improve our ability to deal with these things. And so you have to constantly ask yourself, like, why did I get this thought? What caused me to get this thought? If you're able to identify, like, okay, this thing caused this thought in me, that is going to be very, very beneficial for you. Because then and only then will you actually understand that this is the cause that is causing the consequence of anxiety. And so you'll be able to avoid it in the future, or like be able to identify these anxious thoughts before they even happen to you, which is very, very powerful. So this is the exact way that I have found to deal with anxiety and to stop your brain from bullying you. You can scroll down and subscribe and tell a story about an anxiety attack or something you had in the comments. Just let it out and let other people read about it, because the more we share about ourselves, the better sort of a community we can build. So scroll down and subscribe and talk about your story in the comments. I also have like a product to sell you, which I don't want to sell you, which is not even ready, but you can see it in the description. You don't have to. Most people won't. It won't even apply to most people, but you can check it out in case you're like intrigued and interested. And scroll down and subscribe. Don't sacrifice your future self for the pleasure today. Peace.